How can you describe the Russian world in 2 words? Hatred and envy. Russians openly, with their so-called broad soul, hate and despise other nations, especially those that have taken them in. Russian patriots somehow believe that wherever their foot steps in Bast's shoes, it automatically becomes Russia.
Hail, brothers and sisters! Hail! Fear, old world!
What the lovers of the Russian world are doing in Ukraine is a separate chapter. In psychiatry, they rejoice that Russia is bombing them and destroying their own homes. Some unique individuals even guide missiles to their own cities.
A former communist deputy of the Zaporizhia City Council was directing Russian missiles at Ukraine. The SBU detained another representative of the aggressor country's agent network. According to the investigation, the enemy accomplice turned out to be a fervent supporter of communism.
During the so-called defense of the Russian world, as many Russians have died as in World War I. And do you know where the lovers of the Russian world are truly unhappy? In countries where there is no war yet. They sincerely suffer there because Putin is not bombing them, and they pray for Russian troops to finally come to them, to loot, rape, kill, humiliate, torture, so that it feels traditional and homely.
We will defeat everyone, kill everyone, rob everyone we need to. Everything will be as we love.
It turns out that Russians are suffering greatly in Paris. According to a certain journalist Karyeva, who has been living in France for 25 years, living there has become unbearable.
It was clean, lovely, friendly, very comfortable for living there, very prosperous, which also matters. Extremely safe, including for women and children. And clean, so to speak, all services, all amenities were not just at arm's length, but right here and now, whenever you wanted. Delicious with amazing cuisine. None of this exists now at all.
Yes, France is not the same anymore. Paris doesn't measure up to the service in Saransk. Of course, when this person fled the great chicken leg empire in the 90s, she liked everything. But now this individual has eaten well, cleaned up on the beaches of the Riviera, and started longing for the homeland, for Pushkin and the samovar.
Russia is generally distinguished by its remarkable openness to the world. And you realize this when you come here from Europe, because, well, what's the first sign? It's the presence of restaurants with any cuisine.
An immigrant from Muscovy complains that the French only love French cuisine. And also, the French can't even pronounce the letter H. And just imagine, they mispronounce the names of French kings.
The French don't have in their, so to speak, phonetic grammar. Or as you would say, they don't have the sound H. So their kings are not Heinrichs, but Henris.
Oh, seriously, enough already.
So a Russian patriot knows better how French names are pronounced in French. Now we're going to blow her mind, because the traditional Russian name Varvara is actually a distorted version of the name Barbara.
I don't understand a damn thing. You're saying, I don't understand.
But behind all this rural Soviet everyday chauvinism lies indeed genuine, unfeigned hatred.
You see, when it comes to politics, we are dealing with very dangerous people. Having lived there for 25 years, I can say this with absolute responsibility and confidence, and I am ready to defend my words anywhere.
One question. Why hasn't this woman fled from the concentration camp called the EU to the cozy swamps yet? Because you can only love Russia from a distance so as not to be poisoned by the Russian spirit.
We've arrived at the most famous village.
Wait!
And it's famous because they hold competitions here for throwing cow patties. Or, well, poop, basically.
But not all vatniks indeed strictly adhere to safety techniques. And some have decided to move from decaying Europe to Russia.
We are relocating from Germany to Russia because we no longer see our future in Germany in the near future.
We hesitated for a long time, but we realized that Germany is no longer the country we knew. The streets have become dirtier, the atmosphere has become tense, and our politicians have become completely helpless.
Everyone feels that Germany is at a dead end. What went wrong? Why did we choose Russia? There is order there. No gangs that terrorize people with impunity.
Satan. I'm here. How about you? Aren't you ashamed?
There are absolutely clear rules. No everyone come in and no chaos at the borders. Life is still affordable there.
This is an example of brain sterilization. These guys must have watched Russia Today around the clock and believe that living in Russia is 1,000,000 times richer than in Germany. Can you imagine their surprise when they move to this paradise?
In the last 30 years, approximately 34,000 villages have died out. On average, 3 villages have died every day over all these years. In the Tver region, this statistic is tangible. You drive along the road and abandoned houses flash by one after another, entire villages where no one lives anymore.
The funniest thing is that the main complaint these two bumpkins have against Germany is that they support migrants there.
And when we start talking about this openly, words appear where people say, you are ungrateful, or you have no sympathy for refugees. Refugees? We do have sympathy for refugees, but we also have eyes.
We see that pensioners are collecting bottles while politicians spend billions on migrants. This is not solidarity, this is madness.
And who are they themselves in Germany? Just think about it. Indeed, migrants are leaving the country because this country supports other migrants. A fairy tale house. This perfectly characterizes Russians. That is, the fact that Germans accepted Russians is normal, but others, in the understanding of Russians, are Untermenschen. They no longer need to be supported and accepted. A Russian chauvinist is a Russian chauvinist even in Baden-Baden. We await the return of this wasp nest cell to its native harbor. And perhaps soon we will see news of how this former Frau receives a sack of potatoes for her husband, who was negatively revived in Ukraine, because in her beloved Russia, they have brought the death conveyor to life.
Here we are at the cargo terminal, and now we are going to receive. They will be taking out our cargo 200. Here they brought our coffin, and we will load it into the Gazelle for Ivanovo.
Industrialization, Russian style. Something for the vatniks to be proud of in the hated West. And how could such collections be complete without the leeches clinging to the Baltic countries?
In Lithuania, they restored the monument to the former president of the Republic of Lithuania, Antanas Smetona. By the way, I read his biography. It is very, very similar to the biography of Stepan Bandera. He was also a fighter for Lithuanian independence. Are they preparing Lithuania for something? Why do they say that there will be a war in Europe after all? And won't it come through this country?
Russians don't like the monuments Lithuanians are erecting in Lithuania. They forgot to ask the opinion of the people who erect monuments to Prigozhin and Motorola.
Heroes don't die, they live in our hearts. Streets are named after them, songs and poems are dedicated to them, and busts are unveiled as well. Today this happened in the park named after the Lenin Komsomol. There they commemorated defender of the DNR Arsen Pavlov, known as Motorola.
The vatniks should not be concerned about the monuments being erected in Lithuania, but rather about where to find enough monuments for their own boys.
April, friend, once again in Ryazan. What? Receiving another flight with body evacuation.
Russians are also getting agitated in Estonia. It turns out they are not liked there. I wonder why.
In any workplace. Where Estonians work, when Russian clients come, they ask the Russians to serve them. Even in the same hospital. If you work with Estonians, the Estonians do not know Russian and ask the Russians to translate. What's the logic?
The level of brainwashing has reached such proportions that she genuinely doesn't understand why Estonians in Estonia don't know Russian. The answer that they are Estonians in Estonia seems illogical to her.
It's actually easier to move so that no one has to learn Estonian and for this country to simply die out.
Unfortunately, the Russian world continues to poison civilized countries. Hatred and aggression are produced around the clock by those wearing St. George ribbons, and fans of cleaning fish on volumes of Pushkin.
Stupid. How can one nation manage to half the planet in 2 years? 2 years have passed. The hype has died down and everyone is fed up with not only Russian people, but also NATO residents with your behavior wherever you have gone. You behave worse in Russia.
Don't even try to understand the Vatniks. There's no need to get inside their heads. It's an abyss where incense swirls mixed with the sickle and hammer. The psychology of the adherents of the Russian world was more or less explained by one of their own representatives.
What does it mean, like, for you to be a Russian person?
Firstly, it means understanding that you were born in a country that in this life, in mine, in yours, 1,000 years ago and 1,000 years in the future, will always be the bearer of those values to which we are accustomed. Those values that existed 60 years ago when I was born and the values we have now in our country are identical.
So, Russians are proud of not developing. For 1,000 years they have adhered to the same values. And we wonder why they behave like primitive savages. The main enemy of the Russian world is not Ukraine or Europe. It's progress.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.